let's get to our next story, man. And I'm excited to have you guys talk about this. Uh, James, are you a Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame voter?
I'm not, and I definitely should be, and I wish I was.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the 2024 Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame inductees, as aggregated here by Wrestle Purists, but I know they're pretty good at that. And here's our Hall of Famers. We got Roman Reigns, the Young Bucks, Shingo Takagi, my guy Paul Orndorff, which I'm really excited about. Johnny Saint, Shima, Bobby Davis, Los Hermanos Dinamitas, and Johnny Rougeau. I mean, very clearly the top two on the list. And I think there was a little bit of controversy surrounding both these acts. First, Roman Reigns. For some reason, and even my bosses at the Voices of Wrestling, Joe and Rich, they didn't vote for him either. And I think the big part of the reason why people don't want to vote for him is because, yeah, he was on top in the WWE for a long time, but when you took him out, numbers didn't really change. And so people are like, well, was he really a draw? And a lot of people feel like the matches aren't any good. I happen to disagree. I've kind of always been a fan of his. I went to 2 WrestleManias and he was headlining both of them. And I feel like he is a big draw. And when he came back and he turned heel, the bloodline has been huge for WWE. So I just don't really see the argument against Roman Reigns. But what do you guys think? James, I'll start with you. What do you think about Roman being a Hall of Famer?
I was as anti-Roman as you could get for the longest time, but he's the biggest star in the business right now. And he is the integral part of one of the greatest storylines told in modern wrestling history, and some would argue wrestling history. This entire thing has been the story for what, 3-4 years now?
Yeah,
4 years. Yeah.
That's insane that we have anything in WWE going for 4 years, and not only that it's going for 4 years, but it's the story. Mm-hmm. All the other major stories wrap into it, and to me, I would have voted for him. I absolutely would have voted for him, even though I was a huge skeptic for years on Roman Reigns.
Yeah, because you were, we'll be honest, you're like AW guy, probably predominantly, right? Yeah,
big absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I hated on WWE for a long time. Yeah. Even when I was a kid, I loved WCW. I watched WWE, but I never thought it was as good as WCW back in the day. But listen, when they do something right, I got to give them credit. And this has been phenomenal. And he's the guy on top, and he's been the guy on top for a long time. And I think this is a kind of a I don't want to say a golden age, but they're doing WWE right now is better than I think it's been in at least a decade. Mm-hmm. And he's the top guy and the top story in the top promotion in the world right now.
Yeah. Joe, what do you think? What do you make of the criticisms of Roman Reigns? Is there valid criticism out there? And what do you think about him making the Hall of Fame?
So I think there could be valid criticism in terms of the match quality. I really do think his matches, because they are very slow paced and story and emotion driven, that doesn't fit a lot of what the modern style is. A lot of the modern stuff is very fast paced, hard hitting, and Roman doesn't do that. But when you look at his whole career, like the bloodline stuff, obviously, as James mentioned, but the Shield stuff, like the moment the Shield stepped onto Monday Night Raw, they were the most overact in wrestling from that moment. And Roman Reigns was a rookie, a couple years in NXT that had barely any developmental at all. If you look at his entire resume, people will say the numbers didn't drop much, but they did drop when Roman left. SmackDown ratings did go down when Roman left. Roman's quarter-hour numbers are higher. Yep. Roman and the OTC, top merch seller. The Bloodline stuff, top merch seller. He is probably the hottest babyface in all of wrestling right now, while still being a jackass heel. He is a big star, and I know the knock on him was, well, WWE can do that with anybody. They can make anybody the top star.
No.
People say that, but
no, people do. Yeah,
they weren't able to. WWE wasn't able to do that.
No,
and because the point is Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
For years.
Yeah,
I've always liked Roman. I didn't think he would ever reach his potential because of Vince McMahon, and he's shown, I think, what he's always had in terms of being a top star. And Roman has helped make other guys bigger stars. Jimmy and Jey Uso are bigger stars because of Roman Reigns. Sami Zayn is a bigger star because of Roman Reigns. Cody Rhodes is a bigger star because of Roman Reigns. Now, I do think Cody would have been a star without him, but Cody needed somebody like Roman Reigns and the character of Roman Reigns to be a true transcendent main event babyface.
He legitimized him as a main eventer.
Exactly. Yes. And I think Roman's not done. I think he's going to make Jacob Fatu a big star. Jacob Fatu probably could have been a big star without him, but you can tell every time they interact. And tonight on SmackDown, when they had a stare down on SmackDown, and that crowd went wild for it. They want that so bad. So looking at his entire resume of what he's done for the company, his merch numbers, his actual drawing power, and helping others become stars, I think it's hard to not put him in.
Yeah, and for the argument that that they could do that with anybody, that is not true, because they have tried. Like, they tried with Roman Reigns for years. They eventually got him. They're trying with Solo. It's not working with him. Jacob Fatu has outshined Solo. I think everybody could agree with that. Look, they tried it with Mr. Kennedy. They tried it with fucking Jack Swagger. They tried it with Drew McIntyre. He failed. He had to leave, right? And then he came back. You know what I mean? They have. There's been a lot of people that they've tried with, and then ultimately failed, and those guys had to go somewhere else, and they're around on the indies right now, or they're lower card acts and things like that. So they can't just make anybody a top guy. It's the same stupid argument. I'm going to be on my soapbox here for a second, where people say that anybody that Kyle Shanahan has as quarterback is going to be able to win and run that system. That is horseshit, because I've seen it happen. It didn't happen with Brian Hoyer. Couldn't happen with Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, Josh Johnson in the fucking NFC Championship game. Couldn't happen. He put Christian McCaffrey out there. Couldn't do it as a quarterback. He's only been able to win with a couple of different quarterbacks, but he makes those quarterbacks better, right? Mm-hmm. And that's things like, the WWE system has been very beneficial to Roman Reigns, right? I don't think Roman Reigns could have made it in other promotions, but he made it here, and he is essentially undeniable at this point. I don't see the argument against him. I really just don't.
To me, there's a lot of backlash about them pushing him down people's throats too early. But the same thing happened with The Rock. There was a huge backlash against Rocky Maivia early on when they were pushing him hard, and they pushed both of them hard because they saw the potential, and both of them eventually transcended and got over. I'm not saying he's The Rock, but it's a very similar circumstance where there was a lot of pushback early with The Rock, the same way there was with Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. John Muse is in the chat. Thank you for being here, John. He says the creative arguments against Roman end when you ask, what was Sammy's goal and what was Cody's goal? Everything that those two guys were doing, right, revolved around Roman. Roman was the straw that stirs the drink. That was the entire thing. Other people contributed to the success of the bloodline. The bloodline would not have been as successful without Roman Reigns, right? Mm-hmm. And it still wouldn't be as successful without Roman Reigns. He is the reason why it's successful. And the whole company revolved around that storyline for years, and its turnaround happened because of that storyline. And AEW's downturn kind of happened because of that storyline, because they got so hot, and there's only so much TV, almost so much wrestling that one person can watch, and a lot of people chose them over AEW because they got say
very few moments, and maybe somebody can point another one out, but Sammy hitting Roman in the back with the chair is the only moment I've seen in wrestling break the microphones.
Yeah.
Like their microphones and their TV mics busted that night. And, they still had some, obviously, but the moment was that big. Like, the main event match wasn't that good. A lot of people probably would tell you it was a pretty average to boring match.
Yeah.
I think Dave, even in the Observer, called it a 3-star match with a 5-star 5-star angle.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
But Roman has those. He has the moments that the entire arena or stadium gravitate to. When he came back at SummerSlam, the match Cody and Solo was sucking at that point. It was boring. And Cody and Solo ended up having a couple pretty good matches later, but that one, it was boring. But once Roman's music hit, the entire vibe changed. The atmosphere changed. There are very few people who can walk into a stadium right now for a wrestling show and the entire stadium gravitates towards that one person.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. You know, I was at the WrestleMania where Roman beat Cody in LA, and everybody uses that against Roman. He's not the booker. I'm sure he has a lot to do with it, right? And I'm sure he was a part of that decision, but ultimately there was one person in charge at that time. But people keep saying that people were leaving the stadium like super pissed and disappointed and like swore off wrestling. That didn't happen in my section. My section was holding up their ones. They were excited. They were happy that Roman beat Cody, right? Roman's a megastar. Let's go on to the next act, which is another controversial one. And I just don't see the controversy. JD didn't even vote for the Young Bucks. But I voted for them. I felt like Roman Reigns and Young Bucks, and I'll get to the rest of the other people that I voted for because some didn't make it, but I thought Roman Reigns and the Young Bucks were no-brainers. But the Young Bucks have been on the ballot for a while, and you know, they draw a lot of heat among the retired wrestler community. They're like in the bottom 10 of the retired wrestler community. They just don't like, old wrestlers just do not like the Young Bucks. But the journalists and some of the modern wrestlers all voted them in. They got in with, let me see, 61% of the vote. They got 280 votes. That was up from last year's 55%. So they almost made the cut last year. But yeah, what do you think of the Young Bucks, James? Do you think there's a good argument against the Young Bucks not being Hall of Famers?
I don't. I just think it's old curmudgeons not liking the new style. They're the king of flip-de-doos, you know, and getting in their moves. But they've changed wrestling. They kind of defined the tag team scene for over a decade. And then, of course, Dave Meltzer's tweet had them pack an arena with over 10,000 people with nothing but indie stars. And then, of course, they went on to found AEW, the first real threat to WWE in 20 years. To me, there's no question that they are, as wrestlers and as influential movers in the pro wrestling community, as both, they should have been in the Hall of Fame for sure.
And not to mention, like, nobody has as many Tag Team of the Year awards as the Young Bucks. They might as well, at this point, name the award after them, much like Dave Meltzer named the Technical Wrestler Award after Bryan Danielson. I think there's an argument to be made that you can name the Tag Team of the Year after the Young Bucks.
Well, look at Private Party. They lost that match early in AEW to Private Party, and everybody started talking about how Private Party was the next big thing. They haven't done anything since then. No. Like, the Young Bucks made them look like $1 million, and they make so many tag teams look like $1 million. And listen, they are not my favorite style, not even close. I'm a Briscoes guy. I'm an NWA Blood and Guts guy. But
FTR,
yeah, exactly. But they keep having some of the best tag matches I've ever seen, the best cage matches I've ever seen. They're always there, putting on some of the best shows I've ever seen, even though they're not my style.
Joe, what do you think about the Young Bucks going in?
I think the big thing with them is what they did outside of the bell-to-bell stuff. I'm hard on the Young Bucks a lot. There's a lot of their wrestling matches I don't like because I do feel it's very copy and paste of the same matches they were having in PWG. But with that being said, the merchandise that they brought to indie wrestling, the packed arenas that they were able, like Ring of Honor was doing genuinely well in their ticket sales with the Young Bucks as the top act. As James said, there was 10 to 15 years pretty much after the Hardys broke down, the Dudleys were outside of the WWE, that there just wasn't legitimate tag team wrestling on TV.
On the major stage,
Yeah, on the bigger stage. Like WWE was just throwing guys together to advance single storylines later. The Young Bucks really breathed life back into tag team wrestling. I love tag team wrestling. And the Young Bucks saved the idea of tag team wrestling on a bigger scale in the United States.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Now, Joe, you're the reason right now that I am currently blocked by the Young Bucks. Because my Twitter account used to be, so Joe and I had a podcast back in 2017. And so we would both be tweeting from the same account. And then and he just was talking mad shit to the Young Bucks on him. What the fuck? And then they blocked me. Or they blocked the account. Well, then, we gained such a following on that account. Like years later, I had control over it, so I just deleted my personal account and I made the podcast account my account. But because of that, I'm blocked by CM Punk and the Young Bucks.
I remember the exact tweet that got me blocked by CM Punk. Also,
Yeah.
I just want to say, ESPN put out a list of pro wrestlers who turned to be professional UFC fighters, and they had CM Punk on the list, and he hadn't fought in the UFC yet. And I just retweeted it and I said, "Can you really call Punk a UFC fighter? He hasn't fought yet." And he didn't fight for another year after that. That tweet got me blocked by CM Punk.
Well,
even in 2024, can we really say he's ever fought in the UFC? Technically,
hey,
you know what? I thought that it was the time. I can't remember if it was you or me, but it was CM Punk was about to face. He was announced for a fight. They didn't know who his opponent was, and it says his opponent was TBD. And it said CM Punk's scheduled to face TBD. TBD currently favored, and I thought that was the tweet. I thought that was the tweet, but either way, it was
good.
Yeah, CM Punk.
Yeah, going back to the Young Bucks, just what they've done for pro wrestling in general. Like I said, the merchandise, bringing merchandise to the indies and making the indies a legitimate chance for people to make money, I really don't think happens. Like the Young Bucks and Matt Cardona really getting onto social media and breathing life into social media, merchandise that way, I really think makes them deserving on that alone. Even if you like objectively, again, I don't like their style all the time, but they still have great matches all the time. Looking at it from an objective point of view, the Young Bucks versus Kenny Omega and Adam Page, probably one of the greatest tag matches of all time. I mean, top three.
That one match of the year, and for a tag team match to win match of the year, that's pretty rare.
The first FTR match they had is the only time, actually one of two times, I actually paid money to watch an AEW pay-per-view event, because I wanted to watch FTR, who was my favorite tag team at the time, wrestle who everybody else said was the best tag team in the world, and I wanted to make sure it didn't buffer. It was on pay-per-view. I paid $45 for it, or however much it was. That doesn't happen with any other tag team, but the Young Bucks made stuff like that happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. There are arguments out there. I think that one of the arguments that JD had, and I think Transferring Heat brought it up here. Let's see. No, hold on, not that one. Oh, on a national stage, the Young Bucks, no bueno. They run off viewers. Go look at their quarter hours, but I'm a hater. So that there is some truth to that. Mm-hmm. So since they've been in AEW, they have not been the top draw in the company, and in fact, their quarter hours have gone down at certain times. They have not been a top act. They've only main evented, I think, one pay-per-view, and that was the Sting one. Turned out to be a fucking monster, right? Of a pay-per-view, and like not only at the box office, but at the pay-per-view. And of course, it was a 5-star match and Sting's final match. I think they deserve the Hall of Fame just for that. But there is that. So there is truth to that. They have not been big draws for AEW since AEW's come on, because other people have just surpassed them. This latest run that they're on with the Okada stuff, and then doing the pile driver to Tony Khan, has flopped majorly, and their latest run as heels has been a big flop, and I think people are holding that against them. And they had the CM Punk stuff, which I don't think should factor into anything. But the one argument that I think I hear a lot of the old time wrestlers say is that they not only, it's not that they just have their style that I don't like, it's that their style has permeated into other people. They have been influential in that aspect, to where a lot of people are now copying the Young Bucks. You have a bunch of Young Bucks clones out there doing more matches that I don't like. And that's kind of the argument from the old head wrestlers, but their argument doesn't matter anymore, because the Young Bucks are in. They crossed the threshold, so the protest votes are out. The next guy I want to talk about, so Shingo, I think we all can agree, we love Shingo. People are wondering like why Shingo would get in and not Cody Rhodes. Well, you guys got to understand, and Shima too. So the way that it's broke down in different categories, and you have to get 70 or 60% of your category. So the Japanese category this year, I think, was kind of weak. That doesn't mean that Shima and Shingo don't deserve to go in. I'm not saying that, but that's why you're seeing them go in and not Cody Rhodes and not CM Punk and people like that. But Shingo, I think, is tremendous. But Paul Orndorff was a great addition. I'm glad that he made it in. He had been on and off the ballot for years, and so JD and I really pushed hard for him to go in. I know John Muse is a big fan of his. I know a lot of other people that I really respect. We're pushing for Paul Orndorff. A lot of people just when they think of Paul Orndorff, they think of his WWF run in the 80s, but they're missing out on his Memphis run, his Florida run, his Mid-Atlantic run, and his Georgia Championship Wrestling run, his Mid-South run, where he was a main eventer in all of those territories.
Yeah.
Doing tremendous business everywhere. So I'm really glad that Paul weighed in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you've seen, but Paul Orndorff's son actually retweeted and was very thankful and grateful that Paul Orndorff got in. So because there are some people who say, well, this Hall of Fame doesn't really mean anything. Why does it matter? To Paul Orndorff's son, it clearly mattered. It was clearly an honor to him that his dad was honored. So I think that's really cool, and it was nice to see that today.
Yeah,
there's so many guys from his era who aren't appreciated because they're remembered for their WWE years. For instance, the Junkyard Dog wasn't the same guy that he was in Mid-South. A lot of these guys weren't the same guys they were in the territory days.
Yeah, I mean, even Dusty Rhodes might be one of the bigger ones.
Yeah,
in terms of that, a lot of people just remember the polka dots, and the dancing, and may not know, if you only knew him from WWF, like Dusty Rhodes was a really big deal. And so yeah, I could absolutely see that.
Yeah. Speaking of Junkyard Dog, man, he didn't get it in this year, but I'm hoping he does next year. And then the last guy I want to talk about is Bobby Davis. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bobby Davis, but he was the manager for Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, and he was the kind of the prototype for managers going forward. He was a big draw as a manager, so tons of big houses managing Buddy Rogers all over the country while he was the NWA champion. So I was really proud that I voted for him because he made it by one vote this year. And I'm going to go ahead and take credit for that one because this is my first year voting. So if anybody wants to give anybody credit for Bobby Davis going in, obviously give Bobby Davis credit. Yeah. Give Ethan Tyler credit, who did a really great job promoting Bobby and pushing his case forward online. But mostly give me credit because I get the vote now, and he made it by one vote.
that one vote mattered.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys know anything about Bobby Davis, or should I just move on?
Only what I've heard. I believe you, I think you and JD did a show talking about the Hall of Fame, and you did a pretty good breakdown of him, but only from what I've heard from you.
James, you're muted, buddy. Oh, he is still muted.
Hope his mic didn't unplug.
Yeah, it says I can't unmic. It says I can't unmute my guest. That's okay. James is going to work on that. So I do want to talk about Cody Rhodes and CM Punk not making it. I don't quite understand that one. So the modern US category was a really tough one. It was super stacked and super loaded. And so that's why they didn't go in. Because there was so many people that you could have voted for in that category. I think they were canceling each other out. Yeah. But I'll go to the stats here. So CM Punk was he got 238 votes. He's at 52%. So you need to get 60. I think he's going to go in next year. Yeah. I think he gets it. Now, Cody Rhodes, on the other hand, was down to 48.1. I think it's going to be tough sledding for him going forward.
Now, was this Cody's debut on the ballot?
Yeah, this is Cody's first ballot. And James, you're good. You can chime in here. This is Cody's first ballot. What do you think about Cody Rhodes and CM Punk not making it this year, James?
I can see. First of all, I am also a big CM Punk hater, but I would have voted for CM Punk. I think he's been a major deal in two separate eras right now. I can see holding off on Cody Rhodes for a little while. I think he's got a few more years to prove what he can do on the big stage. He's doing it really well right now. I'd like to see a few more years out of him. And again, I like Cody Rhodes more than I like CM Punk, but I probably would have voted Punk and not Cody this time. Hate to say.
So my thing with Punk is he really was the prototype for giving not bodybuilders a chance in the major market of pro wrestling. Like without CM Punk getting as over as he did, does Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson become a main eventer in WWE that leads to him being a big star? Does Seth Rollins happen? So like CM Punk really was a catalyst for that. Also, again, really big before WWE, big in terms of the size of what he could be with Ring of Honor, big in WWE. Look at the numbers for AEW when Punk gets there compared to after Punk leaves.
Yeah.
That's, I think, is something else that should be in his favor. I do think a lot of people probably hold the way he left AEW against him, just as like a little personal grudge. But, it is what it is. It happened and it's done. Him back in WWE, again, the numbers show when he's there, things are better. I think he should get in. If I had a vote, I would have voted for him this year. Cody, I would like to see another year or two, but also, again, his contributions to making AEW exist, him kind of being the face of the original All In was a really huge deal. Like, they wanted 10,000. I think they got 15,000.
Yep.
I don't know if a lot of AEW, if that ever happens without Cody Rhodes. And there was other guys that absolutely required, but Cody was a catalyst for that.
Cody was a draw in Ring of Honor, and it was him and the Young Bucks, but Cody was very much a big draw for them. Cody was a draw all over the indies. He was a draw for AEW. He's been one of the biggest draws in WWE history. He's headlined some of the biggest gates that they've ever had, and they're on a run of major arena sellouts, and he has been the catalyst. I felt like he was a no-brainer first ballot, a Hall of Famer, but some people don't. Some people, when they look at first ballot, they're looking at Hulk Hogan, right?
Yeah.
And he's not Hulk Hogan.
And there's only, was it like 10 or 15 first ballot Hall of Famers?
Yeah.
I know like Austin, Rock, I think Kurt Angle, Okada.
Oh yeah.
Nakamura was one. I looked at the list earlier today. So there's not many. That is a hard list to crack.
And I can see a number of people simply saying, love him, he deserves to be there, but he's not first ballot. Yeah. I'll vote for him next year or the year after. Yeah. I 100% can see that. And Joe, you made an excellent point in that for years it was 6'4", 240 if you want to be in WWE, and he was the leader of that movement. He was the guy that changed the game to allow non-6'4", 240 guys to make it in. And that's changed wrestling in such a massive way, all of pro wrestling, that it really can't be understated. I'm really glad you brought that up. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree.